We don't read a lot of plays, but I will say this one specifically was pretty jam-packed, like in terms of the purpose of marriage, in terms of class and ownership, and the tumultuous times of serfdom ending. And I got a special thing to talk about with you today on the hypochondria issue. Would it be okay if we do this old school style where we just walk through this and kind of get each other's reactions on it?
The proposal, Una Unovich. Yes.
Oh, yes. So my name is Una. Nice to meet you. My friend Crypto joins me. We just get together, read something, and just kind of talk about it. That's what our channel's all about. And speaking of two buddies, we got Lomov and Chubakov, which I'm sure I'm butchering those names, but, Una and Crypto, two buddies that are kind of living, near each other, and even like their lands kind of touch essentially. And Lomov comes over dressed to the nines. And why is that, Crypto?
Because he is about to make a proposal to the father for the lady of the house, his daughter.
And boy, is he nervous. Like, weren't we all, I guess, per se. But what I find great about Chekhov is his humor, the way that, like, you get that inner monologue of just like, he's probably here begging for money all dressed up. I'm not giving him a dime. Oh, you want my daughter? Come right in. Let's talk. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I found myself chuckling many times. This is a really whimsical, fun little play. It has some serious undertones, but I think that for me, Chekhov was trying to make, it very jovial and kind of jest at these situations that probably were happening repeatedly during his time.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into this, because I think we could do this conversation better discussion here than we did we had a similar story from Dostoevsky that kind of tackled this, but I think we got sidelined. I'd love to revisit this discussion, and maybe we've come further since we've had that discussion. But the daughter, Natalia, she comes in and they start discussing how their lands are close. They even touch. Oh yeah, remember my oxen meadows? Wait, my oxen meadows? No, mine. And then thus begins a very humorous turn where the two are arguing over literally the stupidest thing. Like, even Natalia admits, this is not important to me. It's the principle of the matter. But like, if we look at like, why is Lomov even coming here? Sure, we can make an argument he's trying to distract himself because maybe he doesn't actually want to get married. I mean, there's that angle. But he says this in the narrative. It says, if I give myself time to think, to hesitate, to talk a lot, to look for an ideal, or for real love, then I'll never get married. And I felt like this was kind of Chekhov talking to me. I felt like this is him posing the question, well, what is marriage? Why does one get married? What is the reason to get married?
Oh, that's a loaded question for sure. Obviously, I think it depends on the person individually. If I'm looking back at this time frame, it's probably going to be either ownership of land, which obviously the story hints at of Owen Meadows, or it's going to be money, a dowry of some sort, and lastly, some type of movement in your class or status, like you're marrying up, to move into royalty, or you're moving up to move into, a noble family of some sort. Those are probably the main reasons. Now, the romantic, because I'm a big romantic and softy, it's going to be for love, and yeah, no, it's going to be for stability, the security of what you're going to be able to have in life during this time frame, I would say. Maybe even now today. I don't know.
Well, it's worth pointing out that feudal systems in general it was a way to get ahead, right? By joining lands, by forming alliances, even kings would marry off their daughters to other lands to kind of secure their borders and such. It was a very common way of securing things because at the time, it's worth pointing out that land was how you made money, right? Like, this was I don't want to say it's pre-industrial, but let's put it this way. The Industrial Revolution changed a lot of things along with the Second Industrial Revolution, where it became about what you produced and the consumption of goods, and the rising middle class allowed the consumption of those things, right? So let me reel it back. What does this have to do with marriage? The idea is, at the time, land and how much you could grow on there, whether it be animal or crop, was how you became wealthy, right? So giving up land was important, but it was also the marriage between two that mattered. So what is it that we think? There's three characters essentially in this. What does each one want, right? Lomov seems like he doesn't know what he wants. You have Chubukov, who, I don't know, is he protecting his? Like, for some reason, though, he still wants to marry off his daughter. Maybe I missed why that was. Like, I know that people want to marry their daughters off, but, like, this was a big deal depending on who they were marrying and such. And Natalia, all we know is that she just wants to get married. Like, that... You know, like we don't have a lot of character depth, but we have the stereotypes. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but I do think Chekhov is playing with expectations on some level of what does each of these people want from marriage, where there's the guy that doesn't know what he wants. There's the guy that wants to use it for status and power. And then I think Natalia wants the connection. Like she wants to throw away the land as soon as she finds out he's there to marry him. Like she's there for hopefully the connection, but I don't think they have that connection. I think this is one of those relationships where, you know, how like they don't have a lot in common. So what do? They just, I mean, literally all they do in this play, at least, is bicker over ridiculous things.
Yeah, they sure do. So go down the rabbit hole with me. This is sort of meta. The story itself is about three people that you're really unsure what they want. And as we're moving forward in time, the country itself is really unsure what it wants. We see that the Industrial Revolution, as you spoke about, it really hasn't taken root. It has happened, it's happening, and it hasn't secured itself, I think, wholeheartedly. And a lot of people are afraid of moving forward, afraid of the future. What does it mean for the serfs? What does it mean for farming? And the country itself is unsure. These three people are unsure. And I think, to me, Chekhov was kind of playing on that of like, are we going to be stuck in the past or are we going to be moving forward? And you have these three different people at different points in their lives. You have the father who just, I mean, to me, I think he just wants to make his daughter happy. Maybe he wants to marry her off. I don't know. Again, not a lot of character development, as you pointed out. But the two younger people, do they really care about the land? I mean, they're bickering about it and then they eventually forget about it and move on to the next thing to argue. And it's just, they want to argue for argument's sake, it feels like, towards the end of the story. But it does feel like this is almost a trap within a trap, so to speak.
Oh, I don't know why, but for some reason, the way you were leading me down that line, I thought you were going to make an argument that you almost had the dad who represents someone who grew up in and only know, well, all these people only know serfdom, right? Even though, I mean, Catherine the Great talked about it, didn't make it happen. Even though Alexander II, years prior to this from the 60s, made the speech about trying to liberate serfs. You had human rights coming into the picture. I thought you were going to make an argument that the dad was the previous generation and that the two here who don't care about the land but are trying to figure out what to do with their lives, they don't know. One thinks it's love, the other is not sure. That these represent the first generation of Russians that are having to go through this reformation, essentially.
Well, they are, and I think that is a point of the story as well. And they only care about it when the other cares about it. And I think that's something that speaks to human nature. A lot of times, if it's out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't matter, right? You've forgotten about it. It's not a big deal. Well, now that you've mentioned it, it is a big deal to me. So this is my land. And as you pointed out, land is equated to wealth. Land is equated to power, status, and that is still hugely important, even though it's dwindling as an important status. Having status is not dwindled. Even today, status matters, right? It just depends on whatever gives you that status. But back then, land gave you that status. So I think the point can hold true.
Well, I think it's challenged too because, Lomov leaves. The dad had come in trying to break them up, right? And the dad's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he was going to propose. And it's like record scratch, like what? Like, and we've seen this with another of Chekhov's stories. If you remember the dog, like where they're trying to figure out whose dog was it? Because if that dog was from a man of power, well, obviously the dog's not at fault. But if the dog was, from someone of low stature, well, then that person who owns that dog's going to be in trouble, right? It's the way that we can kind of flip like this human folly, this way we manipulate things to our end, right? That sounds pretty negative, but Natalia has one of those flips, right? Or Brant, like the record scratch. Wait, he was gonna propose to me. Bring him back. Like, I don't care about that land. Put it on my finger. Come here, boy. Like, she is super excited to embark upon hopefully trying to find love, I guess. Even though apparently there's a line here. We thought it was the land. No, let's get rid of that land. But again, two people that don't have in common. The next thing could be completely frivolous. Which dog is better will be the next war between these two, essentially.
Well, there's two things I want to point out real quick, and because it does matter towards the end of the story, is when the father comes back in and breaks them up of bickering about whose land is whose, who owns it, is Lomov has a panic attack, I guess, is how I kind of took it as being written. I don't think he has a heart attack, or he's verging on having, panic heart attack / so he has to leave for that reason as well. And he keeps saying, my foot's falling asleep, my heart. And he keeps going on about it, and it's pretty comical. And there's the what is he called, the your mother humper or something like that, or your mother has a hump. I laughed out loud with that. And they land grabber, and there's a few insults being thrown back and forth. And then, as you mentioned, when the proposal is brought up, oh my gosh, bring him back. So they bring him back, and now it's just, isn't that kind of true? We've talked about this so many times of what is a relationship? What is it when two people come together? And at first it might be a physical attraction, and then that evolves into something else. When you have no relationship, I mean, these people live next to each other, but they obviously don't really know each other. We tend to grasp on to something that can connect us, and fighting and bickering is as good as anything. And that's what these two do, is like, well, we're not going to get to know each other, so we might as well just like fight over, again, as you said, whose dog is best. And they go back and forth until the father has to intervene again. And I think that brings up my last point of that as we're moving towards the future, we should never forget the past, because they do refer back to the father, in his wisdom of how they're going to move forward. So it's kind of like you got to take 2 steps forward, then 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back to progress society.
Right. And I guess if you're going to progress past ownership, because, theoretically in a year or so, serfdom's gone, right? Which I think, obviously he doesn't know what's going to happen, but there's rumblings. There's been talks about this for decades now, obviously all over the world. The feudal system's kind of being challenged as a whole, and I use feudal system very loosely there. But how you going to move forward, right? You got to give up the land. You got to figure out a new means of production, essentially. But here's what I think is interesting about that. Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole? Here's an interesting thought. Okay.
Yeah, we're going down.
Okay, so come with me. You put it on the tee for me here that these two people are different. How are we going to find commonality, right? Because typically in the pre-feudal system, you had money, wealth, status as the main form of connection, and marriage was a vehicle for social and economical advancement.
Yep.
Right. Put it on the table. There we go. Right. So we got to move past that. How do you move past that to the human connection, to the human heart, especially for someone that's different than you? Have we ever known someone that has been able to do that theoretically, is a question. Now, here's where I'm going to go down this rabbit hole again. Come with me here. Do you know where I'm going with this one, out of curiosity?
I don't, Alice.
Okay. All right, let me hit you with this one. I'm going to read you some quotes. The whole thing of like, okay, Chekhov, he's too good of a writer just to throw hypochondria at us, because I'm like, what does this hypochondria mean? And that's when I started to look at the man's symptoms. Like, what is it that we're ailing him? When did they pop up? Like, it was bugging me that until I made up something or I found Chekhov's secret code, didn't matter. I was going to hone in on this.
Okay.
So listen to this. He said earlier, Lomov, I can feel it in my shoulder and head. I jump up like a lunatic, walk about a bit, and lie down again. As soon as I begin to get off to sleep, there's another pull, and this may happen 20 times. Okay, so he's got some pains in his head, and his shoulders, and every time he's down, he's picked up and forced to keep going.
Okay.
Now, another quote, he's asking for water. He's thirsty. He thirsts.
Diabetes. He's got diabetes.
He says, my heart's palpitating awfully. My foot's gone to sleep. There's something pulling in my side. So we've got the head, right?
Yeah.
Shoulders hurting,
Yeah.
right? He's thirsty. He's got pain in his feet, and he's got something pulling at his side. And every time he falls down, he's forced to keep going.
Okay.
Any thoughts there?
So diabetes. What is it? Oh, I can't remember the term where people have like their feet swell, like if they drink too much alcohol and stuff.
I can't say that's where I was going. Okay.
Okay. I don't remember then.
All right. Can we talk about, if we're talking about someone trying to move past the world and suffering, the world's social things, moving towards connecting of the hearts, trying to connect with different people, we need to talk about the story of the crucifixion of Jesus. His head hurts. Why does his head hurt?
Oh, the crown of thorns. Okay.
Crown of thorns. His shoulders hurt at the crucifixion. Why would his shoulders hurt?
Because he's outstretched. Okay.
He's literally
Feet.
being hung. And
Yeah.
every time he's getting ready to fall asleep, there's another pull. And this may happen 20 times, meaning he's forced to keep moving forward after falling down.
Okay, carrying the cross.
Right? Because he kept
Stab in the
falling.
side. Oh.
He fell on the side. He's forced to keep going. The stab in the side, the spear of Longinus, a.k.a. the Holy Lance that was making sure that Jesus was dead. And then don't forget about the pain in his foot,
Foot,
right?
yeah.
The stigmata,
Nails.
right?
Yeah.
And the nails for the hands and the feet.
Dang.
So,
You're
okay,
good.
so if we take him as the Jesus, right? He doesn't know what he wants, but he's the one that has to connect with someone that's different, the someone that has to figure out how to move past the earthly ones. He's got all these stigmata and sufferings that he's moving forward. You could view him as the Jesus-like figure trying to move past the feudal system. Again, I don't want to say it's anachronistic because you don't know serfdom's going away, but worldwide, you've got a lot of revolution that's happening. And I think it's on the people's mind is what is humans' rights? How are we moving forward? And I think whether you intend it or not, it's there in the narrative. You have an interesting story of him being the Jesus-like figure for it.
And what does that make the father and the daughter? And there are only 3 characters in the story, the Holy Trinity. I mean, there's a lot, Yeah, I love this rabbit hole. This is good. Now I got to reread it, I think, and look for some of those other little hidden gems, Easter eggs.
Well, that's the joy of having these conversations, bringing out interesting thoughts and ideas. Let us know, you viewers out there right now, if you're listening to this, and statistically you are. Let us know what your thoughts have been of this story, and what do you think of that angle? Is there some legs there? Let us know in the comments down below. My name's been Una again. Thank you for spending time with us. Check off playlists down below. Peace.
Peace.